Hello, 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 beautiful people. Welcome back to another episode of the USL Show. Thank you so much for everybody already joining in. The most important thing going on tonight, of course, we are glad to be here. Phil, how are you doing, man?
Not well.
Yeah.
I am stressed the F out, but I'm happy to be here. Like if ever there was a time where I could say that sports is an escape, like this is it, right? Like we get to zone out for a little bit, talk about USL. There was a wonderful weekend in playoff soccer. So I get to just dive into that, and I'm happy to for the next hour plus and just not think about everything else.
John, how are you?
Yeah, I'm just going to echo the same thing. It's kind of that classic election night feeling of doom kind of just creeping over right now. But yeah, happy to return to the Saturday thoughts where I was feeling doom because Jordan Doherty and Blake Bodley were dunking on us for picking Detroit.
You know, which is why I'm wearing the Tampa Bay Kiss, because I believed all along, never doubted, never once. Don't look at the picks. Don't do it.
Can I say on that note, I did enjoy the fact that we somehow became like the pantomime villain of the USL playoffs. Like
Yeah.
Everybody was like, F the haters, and they were talking specifically about us, which is it's just a weird spot to be in. Like I'm not used to being the haters. That's not normally me.
I'm normally the hater, so this is a completely normal spot for me. So,
except for New Mexico, I'm used to being the New Mexico hater, but I've got a surprise for y'all later, so stay tuned.
Oh boy.
speaking of the playoffs and whatnot, John, you got a nice little shout out on a broadcast. How cool!
Yeah, my main man, Greg Rakestraw, who, hey, I'm going to be on Soccer Saturday all month if you're in the Indy area, so check that out. But yeah, got the very nice shout out to me and to the USL show on a USL playoff broadcast.
Weird time to be alive. Bizarre time. But hey, speaking of bizarre times, let's go over to NoCal. And Sacramento has decided to mutually the step away from each other with Mark Briggs, which by the way, legalese, if I'm understanding right, the mutual agreement to go separate ways, I think that's legalese for we have mutually agreed upon a severance package. The way it was explained to me was we have agreed on the buyout. That is the mutual agreement. I don't think one of the two parties does not necessarily agree with being fired, but they did agree on how much money they'll get when he walks out
Back
the door.
in my day, we just called it fired, but
right.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. But Mark Briggs, a free agent coach. Is there any way that this makes sense outside Mark Briggs already has another job lined up? Or was this Kevin Nagel overreacting entirely?
I mean, I'm going to say that I don't know, because typically this decision gets made when the team has somebody else lined up or has someone else in mind. The thing about Mark Briggs leaving SAC is I don't know who you could possibly have in mind that is better than him, right? Like that's the only thing that really I feel like this decision doesn't make a whole ton of sense. I think, John, you alluded to probably why, maybe the reason of like, hey, this has sort of run its course, and like I've taken this group as far as I can, and maybe like a fresh voice is needed. I sort of get that aspect. So that's the only thing that I can think of is like SAC just thought like, hey, this team was probably supposed to and probably should have still on paper ran away with the West, even with the injuries they had. So maybe call it underperformance, call it needing a fresh voice, but I can't imagine that SAC have somebody where they're like, oh, well, we just couldn't wait to get blank in, and so we had to let Mark go.
Yeah, I mean, I wrote a little bit about it. It's an interesting decision for this team and this organization overall. When I look at the underperformance this season, and you can't deny that Sacramento underperformed, right? Like finishing fifth, not getting a home playoff game, losing in the first round of the playoffs. That's below expectation for Sacramento. At the same time, Roro goes down after 9 games. Cicerone misses 2 months over the summer. They're missing Wheat and Connor Donovan at the same time for that same stretch. Jack Gurr is out at the end of the season. There were a lot of factors that made it a very difficult job that I don't think any other coach in the USL would have managed as well as Mark Briggs did. For me, when you look at the composition of the squad, it's a lot of older guys, like 29, 30, in the case of Roro, 37-year-olds. And like that made the job harder, but it also sort of makes the case for why don't we hard reset at this point? If Briggs is out and you're trying to move to a new era, you really ought to do it from top down, because you're not going to bring in another coach with this specific group that will improve on the performance Mark Briggs got out of them.
If just to kind of talk about everything else, because we kind of alluded to a little bit, Sacramento has not had the best relationship with their fans in the last few weeks. If this is alluding to a hard reset, how much more tone deaf could you be after the last few weeks? I mean, not to mention, there was also the radio interview that I saw alluded to. I don't remember if it was Nagel or if it was somebody else in the front office staff, basically saying there's big news coming within the next week or so that Sacramento fans should be excited about. And about almost exactly a week later, Briggs gets fired. Like, I understand bad timing. Timing is not always what it is. Maybe that was a last minute decision, but if they came to that conclusion that quickly, it just shows that they just kind of acted out of haste, and that feels like something they did not completely think through. It's just bizarre times in Sacramento.
The real stay woke thing out there is the fact that 2019 Ray Sari plays his last game for Sacramento Republic. 2020 they hire Mark Briggs. 2024 Mark Briggs departs Sac Republic. The following day, it's announced that Ray Sari is the technical director of El Paso Locomotive FC. Coincidence? I think not.
I think it's Ray Sari.
It's a really soft R. It's a really soft R.
Did they just forget the bold? Is there a reason behind that at all?
I'm still trying to figure it out. Graphic design is my passion. That's my. I don't know. I'm not really sure. It's the typeface they went with this year, I guess. I'm not really sure.
So if you're looking at Mark Briggs right now, there's a lot of open jobs across the USL. What's the best fit for him, assuming he's going to take one of them?
Can I throw out something completely nuclear, assuming he stays in the league? I would not be shocked in the slightest if Danny Cruz goes way of St. Louis, with Hackworth being the current head coach, and Lou City doesn't just continue to flex on everybody.
Lou City gets Briggs.
I
don't know. Yeah, it's possible. I mean, if Danny Cruz leaves, obviously, which it does seem possible.
Do you think they'd hire from within? That's kind of my thing with Lou City, is like maintaining the culture or whatever.
True.
My big concern immediately was just the Alan Marcina news, and then the Mark Briggs news. I'm like, if I'm San Antonio, if I'm Oakland, I've already put in a call to Mark Briggs. But San Antonio feels like a potential destination just because they're not that far removed from a title. And I think the issues that San Antonio have had recently feel more about maybe inconsistency of roster construction and trying to make a lot of disparate pieces fit. Whereas Mark Briggs obviously goes about building a team and has a bit more maybe of a vision and the players who fit that vision, versus Marcina, who was yeah, give me 35 players a season. I'll make them work. It doesn't really matter.
San Antonio was going to be my answer as well. They feel even with the squad in place, if they're not playing that extreme style of soccer that Alan Marcina went for, you could probably get some better returns out of them right away. Give Briggs an offseason there with some resources to make some moves. Like, they'd be back in contention pretty instantly for my taste. It's an interesting question, though. Like, you wonder, would he take a step down to somewhere like Oakland that just doesn't have the budget that Sacramento would have? Like,
Yeah.
He's in a position where he can pick out of multiple suitors, you would assume. So that's an enviable spot for him to be in.
I will say as a Locomotive fan, like, they announced Wilmer returning and we were all on Seriously Loco and everything. We had said, like, hey, the most sensible thing to do is to just bring Wilmer back, give him a full off season, like, give him a shot at building the team. And then, like, 2 days after they announced the extension, they announced the Briggs news, and I was like, never mind. Like, they should have waited. They should have waited and went all in on Briggs. But it is what it is. I am sad to see him go. I mean, for a USL manager to stay at a place for 4 seasons or 5, like 5 seasons, it does feel pretty remarkable. So I think it's end of an era in Sacramento, and one where they came back to being serious after starting out so seriously. So they've definitely left a good foundation for the next coach, whoever that ends up being.
I want to go a little out of order just because we are talking about Sacramento. And for the people listening at home, this is just the order for you. This is just going to be out of order for the slideshow. So I want to go to Las Vegas, Sacramento, like, straight away, because, I mean, if I can find where it is. Yes, thank you. Las Vegas wins, and it's on, you go through penalties, and Raiko Rosarena comes up big, and we talked about it before. Would Raiko be able to do it? Would he be able to last a penalty shootout? He proved massive. And Las Vegas gets a win that, according to the people, was a shocking win, but in all reality, it was a close vote, kind of showing that Sacramento was really sputtering in. But even just watching the match, and I know 0-0 doesn't really tell the story of this match, because Las Vegas felt the better team for almost all of it to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, you think about the balance of play in that match. The second half, especially, and going into added time, almost entirely with Sacramento putting 10 men behind the ball and sitting in their own area. Probably a problem for Las Vegas that they couldn't break that team down and really struggled to create chances. But Sacramento, who went for this bold formation change, right? Like, right off the bat, they were in this 4-4-2 diamond shape. They switch into a flatter 4-4-2 at halftime. They just didn't look like they had ideas. They were giving up far too many opportunities for Las Vegas to break into the opposing half in build. They were breaking lines easily. Obviously, Sacramento only uses one substitution until the 120th minute. Like, you're leaving Christian Pirano on the bench. Jonathan Ricketts was there and didn't get a chance to play. Probably a lot to criticize within the management of that match, like, agnostic of the broader Briggs project. But credit to Las Vegas. Like, no, they didn't get over the line in regulation, but they controlled play. They limited opportunities, and Rosarena came up big when it mattered.
Yeah, I think I probably stopped short of, like, Sacramento were really bad, but I was surprised with the amount that Vegas were controlling the tempo and controlling space, I guess, in this match, and really dominating in terms of possession. That being said, it's really interesting to me, mentioning the Pirano stuff, that I think since Cicerone's return from injury, there's been this weird, I don't know, maybe compulsion to use Cicerone at a time in the season when Pirano, I mean, John, you and me saw it firsthand, like the Pirano coming out party in Oakland, where it was just like, this is how this team is supposed to work, right? Like, and it worked extremely well. And then Cicerone came back from injury, and they kept, like, not using Christian Pirano as widespread as they did. Obviously, they lose Gurr towards the end of the season. That was a big aspect of that partnership going away, because Pirano and Gurr together, absolute menaces. And so, anyways, like, I just found it really strange that they could never make this like attacking trident that they tried to use of, trying to use Phillips and Amon and Cicerone, like it's just all three players that you want kind of in front of goal and within the width of the goal. And it adds up to, they're all kind of trying to do the same stuff, and it just never added up to anything concrete. Vegas, I mean, you could point to a lot of players. I will say that they looked better to me, at least in terms of maybe creating something in the run of play when Coleman Gannon came on. Like, it did seem like things started to knit together a little bit better. Because I would say both teams were maybe a little bit disjointed in that game, which I guess you could probably say is a product of just being the first round of the playoffs and nobody trying to overplay and lose the game. But yeah, I credit to Lights for the way that they came through this one. They really made it look quite easy in the end. And the start of this penalty shootout really made me question like my faith in like humanity, because these are some of the worst penalties. I mean, it was a brutal start to the shootout because they were really terrible at the start.
You start off by like, is this pitch playable? Did you like rub in the ground for 5 minutes? Yeah.
They were in the sand trap taking these penalties like out of the hazard, the sand hazard. So yeah, it was a little bit of a rough go of things in the shootout, but I did like how Vegas persevered through this one.
We'll talk about it later when we get to the other penalty shootout. And as Ben Clemens rightfully points out that he hates penalties. The USL has this ability to give us the best and worst penalties I've ever seen in my life. And I've never seen an average penalty in a penalty shootout in the USL, because you either get Quayshow last year trying to dink someone who doesn't move, or just bangers, just, stick it left corner because I can. And there's really no in between. Speaking of left corners, let's talk about New Mexico United. And there's a Bruder film version of Is It a Goal? Is it not? They go down 1-0, and the people were starting to sit there and say, we were right. New Mexico's frauds. Phoenix are going to get through. And New Mexico gets what I think it's a goal. Gets what appears to be a lucky decision or a fortunate decision, depending on it, because if it wasn't given, I think it's the wrong call, but I wouldn't be shocked if it wasn't given. They get the lifeline, and Akale he's gross. Like I know his tap in at the end was not easy by any stretch, but everything else he was doing on the ball, off the ball, was just magic. And in the end, that's the reason why it's a 2-1 win to New Mexico. And not just that, I mean, even with the goal stuff, no Phoenix fan really argued about the result because New Mexico earned that one.
I mean, frankly, I'm going to argue about the result. Like, I thought Phoenix Rising was the better team on the day, like straight up. And I thought Eric Quill made some interesting lineup choices out of the gates that really did not suit the match, namely with Marco Micheletto coming in at the number 10 spot. And for the record, I think Micheletto is fantastic, but he didn't bring the defensive intensity he needed there, and especially Marlon Vargas on the right wing. Vargas is a player who lit it up with Tacoma and Next Pro. He's got some USL experience. He's best off when he's able to be mobile as a forward. He really sat off when New Mexico was settling into their kind of mid-block 4-2-3-1. Phoenix was very much able to dominate down that left channel, get Margarita involved, allow Fede Varela to drift over. It was a tough start to the game, and Phoenix should have taken advantage. And that they didn't is very emblematic of a Phoenix team that's never been able to finish. And then you head into the second half. Quill moves Akale over to the right side, replacing Vargas. Suddenly things come together. And this looks like the New Mexico team that got the number 1 seed, right? Like, they're able to defend. They're able to get out quickly on the counterattack. Akale takes over the game. And that's the important factor for me, is I question if New Mexico had that guy who could come up big in these playoff games. Mukwele Akale feels like he's the player that can do that going forward.
Yeah, I think what we saw, we talked about sort of the form and consistency and things like that down the stretch. And the one big question mark about Phoenix was they were like obviously poor for much of the season, but they had some decent form down the stretch, but no consistency in terms of like where are the goals coming from. And we talked about like, is that actually a strength that they're mixing it up and getting goals from everywhere? Well, I think we saw that having like Akale involved for the whole season, like the fact that Akale was that guy who was going to step up and make the difference, like did end up like basically carrying New Mexico through, because Phoenix not having sort of that focal point, that person who was going to grab the game by the scruff of the neck. I think Margaritha, it's really interesting looking at like the Thought Mob like performance scores and stuff, because Margaritha, it gets like a 6.3. I thought that's pretty unkind given the impact he had on the game. But for forwards, like the difference is made in goals. And so Akale, right place, right time. And in terms of the goal decision and all that, like, I think obviously, like, I thought it was quite funny in the broadcast that it was like, here's the definitive angle. And then they showed a picture that did not show the goal line, did not show like anything. Right. And so I found that quite funny. I obviously like, I posted things where I'm like, hey, I'm just not convinced. And at the end of the day, this is such a marginal decision that it's impossible without any sort of like VAR, goal line technology or something like that. It's impossible to say whether or not like 100% it was one way or the other. So I'm fine with them giving the goal. I just thought it was funny to say like, okay, we are going to show you definitive proof. And then, doing the opposite of that. All that being said, like New Mexico, whether this is like the sign of a good team in the playoffs, I would say, like, and maybe somewhat of what Phoenix did last year in marching to the finals, which is like weather the storm, don't concede when you're like under pressure, and then take your chance, like take your 1 or 2 chances, right? Like, and put them away. And grabbing that Akale goal late on, because who knows what happens in penalties, who knows what happens in extra time. But they weathered the storm for Phoenix, and then they live to fight another round. So I mean, New Mexico carrying a lot of basically, the classic like doing what good teams do, which is finding a way in tough conditions.
There's something that really kind of confused me about this match. And speaking of Quill and just kind of how he managed it, bringing off Micheletto just to bring on another defensive midfielder when you could have just played Micheletto a little deeper and kept the better player on the pitch. Then Rivas, I don't know. Am I completely off base here? Maybe he was just exhausted, but it feels like, and it worked out in the end. But taking Micheletto off, I was a bit worried. It ended up working out to get the goal, but I was just like, I don't know.
I think it's a different style of player. And Micheletto, frankly, has been kind of out of the starting lineup for a month or two at this point. Rivas is a little bit more of an energy guy. He's a little bit more likely to make that run to the edge of the box that really can pay off when you've got Akale kind of dominating the defense and having that gravity from wide. He felt like a better fit for what that game needed. But that's kind of the beauty of New Mexico right now. Like, you can pull on a Rivas or a Nicky Hernandez. I suspect Jacobo Reyes is going to start on the wing against Las Vegas. Like, they've got real depth that's going to do the job against teams if they continue to advance.
Well, let's go ahead and talk about this match that's on the screen. By the way, if you are a visual watcher, on the screen is the lineup for the most recent match for both teams. Now, formations, argue whoever you want. That's what FB reference has. So, like, those are the most recent lineups, starting lineups anyway. Who do you have, John? Do you have New Mexico at home? I mean, the lab looked electric, but I mean, Las Vegas Lights, they continue just to do the dang thing.
Yeah, and our friend Nicholas Murray wrote a nice article about the effect of the lab on galvanizing that team. I'm going to continue to be a heel when it comes to New Mexico. I like this Las Vegas team a lot. I think that they match up quite well. I think that it's going to be a game where the Lights control possession. And I just think that they are due for a breakthrough. Like, I'm trusting the vibe of what Dennis Sanchez has implemented here, the talent they've got on display. I think there's a lot to recommend New Mexico here, but something about the feeling of Las Vegas.
I have New Mexico taking care of business at home. I think this will be straightforward for them. I think it'll be easy. I don't think they'll have any issues. I think like New Mexico is going to win handily. And I have the worst record in the USL Pick'em. And I am counting on that. I think New Mexico wins in a blowout. I don't think this is even close. I think it's a 5-0 probably. No, I mean, joking aside, I do think New Mexico, obviously being at home, they have a bit of an edge. They're always going to have that crowd behind them. And the one thing I will absolutely like, for all of my hating on New Mexico, I have to always give credit where it's due. And the fact is like that this organization has done things right from day one. They've created this like fervent fan base that obviously we love, like to go back and forth and hate on them and everything, but like this is an advantage in the this is an advantage in the lab. But yeah, I think a big win for New Mexico, keeping in mind that I have been horrible in predictions this year, and I'm banking on being horrible once again.
I did pretty good last week on the playoff predictions, and I am taking New Mexico. I don't know, man. I feel like they walked into the playoffs because, frankly, what do they have to play for? They couldn't win the Players' Shield. They couldn't drop below the first seed. The only thing they were playing for was to not get hurt, essentially. I think a win like they got against one of their bigger rivals in the league in Phoenix, as at home, when, I mean, the lab was absolutely bouncing, and I didn't know it rained in New Mexico, but it does, and it was pouring rain, and the people were still having a time of their lives. That's the kind of stuff that can really reinvigorate a team that needed a little bit of reinvigoration, and they got it. I am taking New Mexico. Let's go to Lou City versus Rhode Island, the one seed in the playoffs, where this is the one team that they are playing that really felt like they had their number. The game 2 being that crazy one that was the 5-2 win for Rhode Island, that you can say that one or two of those goals came from Lou City trying to chase the game, and Lou City still had their, they had a bad stretch of form. They didn't have their best players, but Rhode Island is hot. And if anything, Rhode Island is not afraid of Lynn Family Stadium whatsoever. Both teams coming in with a 3-1 win in their most previous playoff match. A little bit of shock, I think, for some people that North Carolina pushed Lou City the way that they did, but JJ Williams comes up superstar and arguably wasn't even the man of the match in his own team despite getting a hat trick. These are two teams that are coming in hot. So what do you kind of see out of this one, John?
Yeah, I mean, Rhode Island comes into this game with a somewhat misleading scoreline against Indy for my taste. I thought they were pretty solidly the better team there. Like, they finished the game playing almost 20 minutes down a man because Stephen Turnbull gets hurt after they're out of sub windows. And you think about the attack where Harivo, Quizera, and Fuson kind of forming up on a trio on the left side, breaking down Indy so easily. Constant service to Williams, constant control of that channel. Just really impressive complete performance. And despite giving up 2 goals, I thought the defense was quite solid. Lou City has a tendency to kind of mess around, I want to say. Like, they gave up the goal early. North Carolina really came in with a lot of momentum in that game. But it was very classic Louisville. Like, they ramp up the press. They get Taylor Davila involved. ultimately ends kind of being an easy game with a slightly misleading scoreline as well. I think that we're probably putting too much emphasis on that reverse fixture when we're considering this matchup. Yes, Rhode Island got the win, but Lou City put up 3.7 XG on them and like still lost the game. That's an exception to the degree that it's not going to happen again. There was also the extenuating circumstance of Ray Serrano was playing like a third center mid. Since then, Danny Cruz has basically abandoned that as a shape choice. If Louisville comes out bright, if they play their 3-4-3 press, put pressure on the ball and are able to tilt the pitch, I think that they're going to advance. This will be a tight game because I put a lot of trust in Rhode Island, but Lou City has the goods.
Yeah, I absolutely, I really have enjoyed this Rhode Island team all year. I mean, I've said it many times on the show that Noah Fuson is one of my favorite players in the league. He had a brilliant assist. Well, I don't think he even gets credit for the assist, which was nonsense because it's like a slight deflection before JJ Williams' second goal. But anyways, I digress. I don't think Fuson is going to have the ability to create as much chaos as he typically is, just because there is a lot more to deal with in this Louisville team. And I just like, when it comes down to it, the strength of this double pivot in midfield, like this Winder Davila midfield, it just I always sort of come back to that, in that when the going gets tough, like these guys are there to either pop up with a goal, pop up with an assist, pop up with a run, take the pressure off, win a foul. Like they just always seem to get the job done. So I am going with Louisville in this. I think overall, like, it's partially the draw of I have to pick Lou City to make it to the conference finals, because like what else do you do, right? Like history says that they will make it. That being said, I really enjoy this Rhode Island team, but unfortunately, I think Lou City have way too much firepower for them.
The way I kind of feel about these matches, or this match in particular, is that we can take what we want away from Rhode Island, saying that there was a lot going on with Lou City. As Patrick Blaine kind of mentions in the chat, it was third match in 7 days away to Tampa Bay and Pittsburgh. They were missing a couple players, as you mentioned, rightfully so. Ray Serrano was playing in way deeper than he normally does in this match. And, you know, at the very end, they were chasing the match, put up a good fight, but doesn't quite work out. I also think that there is a bit of part of the reason why Lou City is so good at home is that even though players won't admit this, they're afraid of Lynn Family Stadium, and whether it's a real result in the eyes of the pundits, those players got a 5-2 win in Lynn Family Stadium, and that's all they need. They're not going to be afraid of Lou City. They know that they've gone out there and not just won, but they've won by 3 goals. I don't think that's going to be an overconfidence by any stretch, but I think that it's going to give them a confidence that other teams in this league simply do not have. I say all that to say death taxes Lou City is in the finals.
You're probably right. Yeah.
Let's go ahead and go down to League One, where we stay with the 1 seeds. And arguably the most interesting fixture in this entire round, as Greenville does it. They beat One Knox, much to the dismay of a lot of USL fans who thought One Knox was going to win fairly easily, where Union Omaha kind of struggle a bit against the Richmond team, who, granted, like, they were the 8th seed, but they were a good 8th seed despite what their point total said. This is also a rivalry match. Don't forget, there was a belt on the line. I don't know if this is a situation where we don't trade the belt during the playoffs, but Greenville is going to have an away contingency in this match. They are going to try to make it feel as much of a home match as you possibly can. But Union Omaha has that number 1 beside their name for a reason. What do you think, John?
Yeah, I mean, this for me, like you mentioned, was kind of the hardest result to pick of the entire round, championship or League One. I thought Omaha, they weren't impressive in the win over Richmond. It was very methodical. They were executing on their style and doing what was necessary to beat a very composed Kickers midfield, but it was slow to come. And the goal itself was quite exceptional with that Logos Kunga going full field effort, linking up with Zico Bailey. You still like that they held Richmond to just 5 shots over the course of the game. Like the defense was clicking and not missing a beat after the really, what could have been an unsettling situation given Mechak Jerome missing that game and with the incident. And by the way, I feel like I should just say, like, go on socials. I'm sure the show account has reposted the fund for his family after what happened there. But like back with the game, going to the Greenville side, I thought they looked very strong in possession against One Knox. You saw them kind of start with that classic 4-2-3-1, 4-1-4-1 defensively, but they were very shifty as they moved up, kind of getting one fullback upfield at a time, able to tuck Corvino in from the right wing to overload that when needed. Ultimately, it was what was necessary to break down a Knoxville team that isn't entirely dissimilar in defensive shape to Omaha. So I think that bodes well. The thing you're worried about for Greenville is Chapa Herrera going down in the first half of that last match that they won. Such an important presence, and I think somebody who could have been really crucial to stemming the tide against Union Omaha. Ultimately, I'm going for the Triumph to win this game. Like I think that they understand the threat that Omaha provides. I think they're hitting their form again at the right moment. And you've just got to trust a moment of McKinnon magic, frankly.
I am going with Omaha, and I've actually, I hate to say this because I've probably cursed them. So sorry to Union Omaha fans, but I have locked them this round to win. And it's strictly down to the fact that Omaha's output against Richmond was low relative to their typical offensive output in any given game across the season, right? Where it's like you expect them to probably raise their game a bit, probably perform a little bit better in terms of offensive output. Greenville's offensive output against One Knox was quite meh. One Knox's output was quite high, and I think they were a little bit unlucky actually in that game to not get more out of it because they did create like a lot more than Greenville. I would say that for me is a worry, especially due to the Chapa injury, that Omaha, like, they can create more, and if they create at the same level that One Knox did against Greenville, they will probably score more goals just because of the quality they have in terms of finishing. So I am going with Omaha to get enough goals to win this one. I just trust I trust Omaha a bit more than I trust the Triumph right now.
I have erased my answer at least 7 times. I have submitted it, and I have edited it, and I have submitted it, and I've edited it. And I'm sure after I say this, I want to come back later and say, actually, I've changed my mind because I don't know. I love what this Greenville team does. I understand Knox really had a good offensive game, only got 1 goal out of it. But if there's another team in this league that can replicate what Richmond did in this last match, I mean, Greenville has the personnel to do it. They have the players. They have that. And we mentioned Chapa Herrera. He's someone you're going to miss, but it's not like they don't have other options that they can plug and play. Not the same at all. But they have other players. But in the end, as of right now, wait 5 minutes and see if it changes. The Chapa Herrera news is why I am going Omaha. If Chapa plays, I think it's Greenville. If Chapa does not play, I think it's Omaha. I think it's that close, knife's edge.
I do want Chapa to be available because the idea of Josue Aron Gomez and Chapa facing off against each other in a playoff match does feel that's a locomotive story that I'm here for.
And I do think, like, if they're without, like, if you think about the way they shifted in that last match, Greenville, when he went down, early on, Evan Lee was kind of the center mid who could make those runs into the box, kind of almost do second striker things. After the injury, he played a lot deeper. And the alternative was to bring on Sebastian Velasquez to kind of link play between the lines. Like, there's a difference in the tactical system, but absolutely not a drop in quality, which is kind of the beauty of Greenville at the moment.
Let's go ahead and go back into the championship where we go to Charleston Battery versus the Tampa Bay Rowdies, where we will talk about the USL Tactics show in just one moment. But the Charleston Battery changes a little bit of system. They change shape because it turns out they can out Lily Ball the Lily Ball. Meanwhile, Tampa Bay Rowdies, they get a goal. They hold off Detroit City. And I mean, Jordan Farr, I mean, there's just something about playoff Jordan Farr that's just special. And he is currently just really rolling. And if there's anybody you don't want to see in the playoffs right now, it's honestly just Jordan Farr. That's not someone I would want to see staring down at me from 12 yards away at the moment. Will we see Charleston come out in the same system that we did against Pittsburgh? Highly doubt it, because this is a team that loves to chameleon and change to do whatever your weakness is. But when you look at Arteaga, Leo Fernandez, Cal Jennings, and Jordan Farr back there somewhere, you have to feel pretty good if you're a Rowdy.
Yeah, are we
The
showing?
Charleston Battery are headed to the conference semifinals, and that advancement is in large part due to the smart changes that Ben Pierman made in terms of the Battery shape taking on Pittsburgh over the weekend. You saw right off the bat that Charleston adopted a shape with 4 forwards. It was really more of a 4-2-4 formation, one that, in an exception to the rule of the season, featured Nick Markanek almost like an additional striker next to the usual bench player Jackson Conway. The change also had the effect of allowing Aaron Malloy and Jay Chapman to split in the pivot, with Malloy often dropping deep to create as Chapman sat between the lines of the Riverhounds' 5-2-3 pressing shape. Still, you were able to keep Markanek upfield direct, where he could distract the defense and open up lanes for Juan David Torres, who you see receiving on the right wing here. Passes into Torres were unbelievably useful for the Battery. They really derived their strength, finding room in the right half space, advancing past Pittsburgh, and dictating where the game was being played. Now, the crucial other plank for the Battery was their ability to win second balls, their ability to maintain possession on the edge of the area. There you see Jay Chapman receiving the ball off the deflected cross. Both he and Aaron Malloy had a ton of recoveries, a ton of tackles, and you're not even seeing the one from that clip recorded on the league stat page. The role that those two played to keep possession and to keep the Battery in charge of territory was vital. As this play ends up developing, you're going to see Malloy possess, draw the defense in, and make sure that Chris Allen, the left back, and Arturo Rodriguez, the left winger, are able to get involved. Rodriguez can look up, find Conway and Markanek in the box, making clever runs off one another, and it sets up the Golden Boot winner for a diving header that ultimately wins the game. Still, none of it is possible without that shape change that Pierman implemented. This is the versatility that makes Charleston so dangerous and really sets them apart as a legitimate title contender.
As you were saying, John, before I interrupted you with you.
Oh, yeah, no. Just getting lost in the sauce with the transition from one graphic to another. Charleston showing that flexibility against Pittsburgh feels like a really big deal for their hopes of making a run. It was kind of easy to get down on the Battery at the end of the season. And fairly or not, like after they had locked up the second seed, there was some experimentation. There were games where they didn't quite look up to speed. Given Pittsburgh's form, given the way that the shape change was able to allow Charleston to kind of fill the lanes of their back five, diversify what they were doing as a passing team, still maintain the structure in the midfield, at almost every level, it felt like kind of the perfect game plan for that match. Almost one that would work against Tampa Bay as well, dare I say. Obviously, the Rowdies and the Riverhounds play a pretty different brand of soccer. But if Charleston is still able to control space and control territory in a similar manner, they're going to be in good shape. I do think that Tampa Bay has shown a real measure of growth and solidity recently. This was a club that, say, at the end of September, I would have told you they were a first round out. It was too easy to isolate Freddie Kleeman at the back and use pace to get beyond him. The midfield, they just couldn't figure it out of how are we going to get Ben Bender in there. Really, it's just going with Crisostomo as Hilton is the double pivot and kind of sort of making Leo Fernandez a third midfielder a lot of the time. That's done the job and stabilized them defensively, but also allowed Leo to get touches in dangerous areas and stir the drink for that attack. You can't count out the FAR factor as well, but there's something about Charleston, the way that Malloy can kind of get those touches from deep and just play over in that midfield, the threat they've got up top, that makes me think pretty confidently that Charleston advance here.
Yeah, I have Charleston going through as well. I think to support John's point, I think their flexibility just gives them an edge. That being said, too, the Rowdies were really reliant on crossing to create against Detroit, and aerially, Charleston won, I think, just shy of, so they won 50% overall, but their center backs won 80% of their aerial duels against Pittsburgh. Like, if there's anything approaching that level of dominance in the air from the center backs, then it's going to be a long night for Arteaga and Jennings as they battle it out in there. I don't see that as like the route to goal against Charleston. So Rowdies are going to have to find a new approach. I don't necessarily think that they've shown as much of the flexibility that Charleston has. I think the adaptation is so key in the playoffs. So I'm giving the edge to Charleston for sure.
I think this one comes down to if you're having to deal with a Jennings and an Arteaga and Leo Fernandez making those late runs, or if he is the one distributing those balls, you can drop Malloy a little bit deeper and let him sit as a pseudo third center back because he's done that before if you need. You know, you have other options that you can pull in. If there's anybody I really trust going against Moon, I mean, you can look at a DeSantos that can shut someone like that down. I think that this team is really set up to have success against the Rowdies, despite the kit that I'm wearing. And the last part of that is I think it comes down to Grinwis in the back, where he is one of the most aggressive goalkeepers I've seen. And when you're looking at someone with the pace of a Cal Jennings and, you know, someone who's going to get those chances in front of the box, Grinwis is not afraid whatsoever to close down that gap as fast as he can because Ben Pierman allows him to do it. And I think that Jennings is going to find trouble getting a clean shot off because even if he gets past a center back, Grinwis is not going to hold his line. He is putting his face in front of the ball as quickly as he can. I think that the Rowdies are going to struggle to break down the battery. And even if this one goes, you know, extra time, penalties, I still back Charleston here.
I think defensively with the Rowdies as well, what they did really effectively against Detroit was force them to the outsides, and then once Detroit had kind of committed towards the sideline, then you send Bodley or Moon up and kind of trap from the wingback spots. If you're trying to do that against Charleston, they're going to play over you into Juan David Torres or Nick Marcanek. Like, come on. That's a recipe for disaster, and it really undercuts what Robbie Nielsen had set up in a way that they're going to have to get creative to figure out how to work around that.
Let's look at Colorado Springs versus Orange County. This was one that ended level according to the season series. Both teams won one, lost one. And the Switchbacks won a very easy 2-0 win over Oakland Roots. Meanwhile, Orange County squeaks out a 1-0 win, but as I kind of mentioned last week, Memphis is either going to score goals or get sent off. They chose the latter in that win, and Orange County wins 1-0 in extra time. How do you see this one shaping out?
I want to push back on a little bit on the Switchbacks win being an easy one against Oakland. There were about 40 minutes of that game where the Roots' 5-4-1 was really hard to break down. And I'm sure you saw the Jairo Henriquez goal that was really wonderful, like working in from the wing, playing a number of these 1-2 give and go type passes to beat like 3 center backs in the double pivot. It was a special moment that it was required for the Switchbacks to kind of take that lead and take control of the game. And I think Orange County is kind of capable of, if not sitting deep like that's not in their DNA, but maintaining a structure that'll be harder for the Switchbacks to break down. And there's a scenario where Colorado Springs' press gets a little bit too aggressive. You send a Matt Real high, the ball turns over and Bryce Jamison is gone. Ultimately, though, given how Colorado Springs is able to attack the way that they push Zandy up with those runs into the space between the lines in zone 14, I don't know if the Ashish Chadha, Seth Kasipli pivot quite has enough steel to stay whole against that team. It feels like the abundance of weapons Colorado Springs has is going to come good in the end. So I think this is going to be a very tight game, but I do lean Switchbacks.
Yeah, I'm going Switchbacks as well. I will say Orange County, it was kind of interesting to see the talk after the game that the Orange County Memphis match was like the worst match of the round. But Orange County, I mean, it was only like bad in the sense that the goals didn't come until, very, very late. Orange County should have won the game quite comfortably. Like, I think they end up with 4 big chances in this game, so 3 of which they probably should have converted. I think Orange County let Memphis off the hook a little bit, and it's something that they can't afford to do against Colorado Springs. Colorado Springs having the difference makers like Enriquez, like Damas, like Zach Zandy, as you mentioned, John. I think it's just I think Colorado Springs is going to have the edge. They're in Colorado. It's hard to look past that as another advantage. Like, the home field advantage is even more tangible when you're at elevation as well. So all that being said, I do think that Colorado Springs will have the edge, but Orange County did leave a little bit in the tank against Memphis from my perspective.
I'm going against all just logic on this one, and 6th seed Orange County just does something for me. James Chambers and what he's done with this Colorado Springs Switchbacks team is absolutely incredible. I kind of talked about it several times that I thought Colorado Springs was the worst team in the West easily coming into the season. And someone like Zandy has been absolutely incredible. Absolutely incredible. Christian Herrera is someone else in goal who last year was not a believer in what was going on there. He has made me a believer. But I just keep watching this Orange County team where, Bryce Jamison is capable of something special every time he touches the ball. And you end up seeing someone like Nakeem in the back who's just so shut down. Shuttler has been playing out of his skull recently. And Zubak is someone who I really like. I like what he can do. There's just something about this team that maybe it's just the past speaking to me, but it just feels like they have the right sauce to go into Colorado Springs and win this one. Let's to the last one. If you are someone who's watching, this is about to change and it's about to be very bright. So I'm sorry. You can blame Spokane for having black text inside of a crest that's not a crest. It is a company logo, but it's fine. Ford Madison goes and gets a 2-0 win against the Charlotte Independents, and they looked like the team that we thought they would come the beginning of the season, and they looked like the team that was going on that Jägermeister run. Meanwhile, Spokane, with the upset of the playoffs, where almost 96% of people voted that Northern Colorado would win that match. Spokane had 3 reasons on why that was incorrect, where they get 3 goals from 3 players in a 3-0 win versus the Hailstorm. That said, Forward Madison has absolutely dominated the series this year with one of the highest goal differentials you'll see in any of these playoff matches, with a +5. Spokane being shut out in all of those matchups. Is there any way that Spokane walks away with the win other than the fact that they just made us eat crow?
I mean, what they did against Northern Colorado didn't feel like a fluke. Like, there were a lot of replicable patterns in the way that they broke that team down. I thought the defensive performance was impressive as well. Derek Waldick showing so much discipline. Like, they hold Bruno Rendon to, I think, no shots. I might be off on that. But they weathered the pressure as well. Like, that was a first half where Northern Colorado ended up with 9 attempts, 3 on target. They were the better team early, but Brooks Thompson, the defense did enough to stay level. You come out of the break, and it really is the moment where that 4-2-4 shape for the velocity starts to shine. The way that Denton and Lewis combined in the pivot and really were able to set the tone in possession, building into the forward line with Luis Heel cutting from side to side. They really bent the Hailstorm's midfield to their will in a way that almost no team has been able to do this season. The big question becomes, can you dominate the ball like that against Madison? Can you bend that back 5 with an extra man compared to the Hailstorm like they did? We kind of underrate Madison as a possession team. They led League One with holding 55% of the ball on average. They played more passes per game than anyone else, Spokane included. There's a real world where Forward Madison just kind of possesses them to death. The chances are going to come eventually. Like, Madison has shown time and again that they're not an attacking juggernaut. They're not going to beat you in a 3-0 win like we just saw from Spokane. But they've got the fundamentals. I think they pull this game out, but I think it's going to be tight again because Spokane, coached by Lee Vaidman, who's done an unbelievable job with this team, like, is not going to make this game a blowout.
Yeah. No, I think we were all surprised to see what happened against Northern Colorado, but it was sort of the big names from Spokane making the difference. That said, Madison is well set up. They've been doing this all year. I think Madison does get the win. I just really liked what they did against Charlotte. They did not allow a shot on target in that game against Charlotte. Now, that to me, like, speaks to they're going to be very difficult for Spokane to play against. Will Spokane be able to create the same sort of chaos that they did against Northern Colorado? I don't think so. Which then leaves that front line, like Boyce, Gebhard, Cheney, to find a way through against Spokane. I think it's going to be going forward in this one.
Yeah, I think that Spokane pulled off something amazing. I think that they gave their fans something to really cheer for and really just show everybody wrong. I just simply don't think they can do it 2 matches in a row. They haven't really shown us they can do it 2 matches in a row since they first joined the league, when they were kind of showing everybody. But it's been about 4 months since then, since they could really string together results like that. And this is just a Forward Madison team that is just littered with talents. If you're looking for difference makers, I mean, yeah, you can look at Boyce, Gebhard, and Cheney, but why not look any further than Sousa and Payne? Like, they are arguably the 2 best wingbacks in the league with, I mean, you're looking at Osman and Krul behind them, that if they get caught too far forward, it's fine. They have 2 of the best center backs in the league with them. I just find it very difficult to see Spokane breaking down this Forward Madison defense and withstanding the onslaught that they're going to get from the wings. And if they can just get crosses into Cheney or get those late runs into Gebhardt, I just think it's going to be game over for Spokane. But that is that. That is all the matchups. That is every single bit of the preview. Unless you guys have something else on another matchup that you wanted to get off your chest.
Trying to think, did I miss anything? Can I just shout out Zach Harivo again? I feel like we didn't talk enough about him. He just got the Players Association's Comeback Player of the Year nod. I thought he was the player of the game against Indy 11. Like, absolute stud and deserves all the praise and the plaudits.
I'm fine. I'm glad you asked.
Yeah, and that was not meant as a dig.
Zach was awesome. I mean, yeah, he wins the USL Player Association Comeback Player of the Year. 4 goals, 4 assists, barely got playing time until the very end because he was recovering from injury and just had to fight his way into the squad. And he is a large reason on why they are what they are. I mean, you kind of mentioned it with Quezera, Harivo, Fuson. If those 3 can keep that kind of partnership up, and also Connor Smith just running and throwing the ball back in as quickly as he can, get him as involved as well in the build-up, why not? I mean, how can you?
That was an incredible moment. Like, that's unbelievable stuff.
How can you just not dream about Rhode Island continuing to win? They feel like they kind of have the sauce. I mean, obviously, we've already talked about Lou City versus Rhode Island, but as when you talk about those 3 specifically, Fuson, Harivo, and Quezera, and pick your poison between JJ Williams, Albert Dikwa, or Clay Holstad rifling one from 30 yards away, you have something really, really hard to stop.
There was some discussion in the Seriously Loco group chat of, is Rhode Island El Paso 2.0 in terms of like entering the playoffs as a 5 seed, making a run. They've got blue and yellow in the crest. Even the crest has a bit of a anchor, the anchor, the cow catcher. There's some things here in terms of a team that maybe wasn't as heralded coming into the season. Could they make a conference final run in their inaugural season? They're capable of it, and I think that is as much a credit to Rhode Island and what Connor Smith has done with that club this year as anything. Even if they do get bounced by what is one of the best teams to probably ever grace the USL in Louisville City right now.
I think I said in our show last week, whoever wins this Louisville Rhode Island game is going to win the whole thing for my taste.
I have one thing in here, and this is partially because our friend Benton Newman had kind of put it out there. Sean Smart is so good. He's just so good. And I just don't know. Like, I'm trying to think who we gave that like fullback spot to in our midseason best 11, because right now Sean Smart's making this look kind of dumb.
Well, I think, to be fair, Smart slowed down in the second half, for my taste at least. And I thought he and Solomon Asante were kind of the weak spot for Las Vegas. Like Phil mentioned, Coleman Gannon coming on, really revitalizing that team. There's probably a connection between those changes coming on and kind of those 2 players being de-emphasized a little bit. I thought Nigra was way better in the game against the Republic. Like, the initiation he was getting in that pocket to the wide side of the Republic diamond was killer, and really kind of generated Las Vegas's best chances, which, like, when you've got 2 young fullbacks that can kill the game either week, like, that's an unbelievable asset to have.
Oh, early on in the Vegas Sac Republic game, there was a pass that was made, and I think it was either Jabang or I think it was a center back who made the pass that broke the entire, like, one pass through to Corey Bennett that he just took a touch that took him too wide, so he couldn't get a shot away. But it was one through ball from a center back to Corey Bennett that was for my money,
This was Nigro
pass
from
of
left
the
back
season.
in the fourth minute.
It was
Yeah,
okay. It was Nigro.
unbelievable.
It was Nigro. Yeah, Nigro was going crazy. I think the thing about this Vegas team that, like, I've picked New Mexico to go through, so everybody chill. But like, the thing about this Vegas team is that they do have a lot of. It's not just like, oh, novelty lights are in the playoffs. Like, between Valentin Noel, JC Nagando, like Corey Bennett, Jabong, like these guys, Nigro, these are quality players. Like, they have a good squad. It's not just like, oh, like, look at this plucky lights team that made the playoffs. Like, these are very, very good players.
And I'm kind of looking through all these. I think that's everything I have for my taste for all these. So,
Yeah.
what are some final USL thoughts from you guys?
Final USL thoughts? I got none.
I just really don't want to see Mark Briggs in San Antonio. That's my final USL thought. Please, anybody in the East, take Mark Briggs, please.
Oh, the Fort Wayne Stadium did happen. That was a thing that was announced. So, and widely assumed just League One will be the landing spot.
I'll eat my shirt if they end up in the championship. That's not happening.
Yeah. Oh, I have one. It is rumor season, people.
You
Don't just listen. I'm not here to start beef with anybody. That's not what I do. We already have beef with the Rowdies, apparently. I just want to throw it out there that when you throw out everything that you hear, whether it be from player, really informed fan, agent, or whomever, and just throw it out there without much else, you're right sometimes. But there's a reason why some of your most trusted sources are not putting them out all the time, because a faceless account can just throw anything out there. Don't believe everything that you read, people.
Yeah,
That's
I'll hold my
That
tongue.
was so cryptic. I have no idea what you're talking about.
There are certain
I know the
people on
account.
Twitter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I know the
who-
account
yeah.
you're referring to. I just like yeah.
This is a real inside baseball discussion that I imagine
Yeah.
many people are like, "What is this guy on?"
Yeah, a little bit, but granted, if you are specifically if you are watching this via live stream, if you're watching us live, you probably know because you're the extra sicko. But if you're listening to this podcast player, I'm sorry.
It's no, I know the account. It was just funny because it's I especially enjoy the breaking news after the fact. I think that's my favorite touch, is when everything is widely known and then the rumor gets posted.
See, I think I should just start posting fake rumors and just see how many of them eventually come true. Like, I heard this. I've heard some things, and I'm just talking about the voices in my head. I heard them, but I did hear it.
We just make an account that's USL News and Rumors bot, and it's just you doing like Mad Libs with random things of like, I heard a Colorado Springs Switchbacks right back is on the move.
It'll be right sometimes.
Yeah.
Breaking. How about some final thoughts, Phil?
Yeah, I'm just gonna try to. I'll see you guys tomorrow. On the other side.
I've been following along as we've been on this, and I'm just full dooming right now. Like,
Oh,
I'm
yeah,
feeling
no.
real bad about how
that-
things are going tonight.
I got that 2016 gloom and doom striking again.
You think about people listening to this on the podcast tomorrow. Yeah, sorry, because you're gonna like be fully in it with the bad news, and we're
You
just
already
gonna come
know.
in at the end here. Yeah.
You already know what's happening. Yeah, I've been seeing Facebook memories and like social media memories of the Cubs World Series win in 2016, which was the height, and then I was immediately brought back down to earth just a couple days later. because it was November of 2016, if y'all remember. So yeah, it's we're right back. We're right back to then. And so yeah, I'm just trying to enjoy and breathe, and it'll be fine, I think. Maybe.
Nothing's real. It's fine. I mean, we have soccer coming this Saturday. No, it's all the same. You know what? I'm a one issue voter, and it's get people out of these freaking baseball stadiums. That's the only issue I care about.
For real.
Can I throw something out there? It's something I saw just about a month ago, and I've saved it and I can't find it anymore. And it's hilarious. Our good friend at ProRel USA made a post that basically said whoever the president is needs to enforce ProRel. That's the way to save America. And it was unironic. And I was like, this is incredible.
I know
hate
that's
everything, man. Like, what are we doing? People live in their own realities, man. Like, what is that?
I'll find it later and I'll send it to our private chat because I was just stunned. I was like, this is not a real tweet. This has to be engagement farming. It has to be. You paid for the tick. This isn't real.
Yeah. I mean, if it's a blue check mark, that's all you need to know, really.
Someone accused me of engagement farming the other day, and I was like, I don't have the blue check mark. Like, I just do this for hobby. Like, this is just sport for me.
Natural born shit poster, right?
John, you have any final thoughts, man?
No, I'm just like in the mental death spiral right now. So yeah, I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, I've really got nothing for this. I have absolutely nothing. Other than thank you all for watching. Thank you so much for following along. If you aren't following us on Twitter or if you're not in the Discord, check it out because we post the links to our pick'em so you can give the live or the fans results and all that kind of stuff. I get all posted later. We hope that you enjoy that kind of stuff, and we hope you enjoy round 2. And of course, we hope you enjoy for the first and final time of night, Allen's voice.
Thank you for watching another episode of the USL Show.
The USL Show is now proudly part of the Protagonist podcast family. Please go to protagonistsoccer.com to check out more work. Thanks for stopping by. We'll see everyone again next time.